Blood is thicker than trophies. Marc and Alex Marquez, the brotherhood that redefined Barcelona. Winning is everything in MotoGP. It's oxygen. It's blood. But there are days when winning becomes secondary, when something deeper gets written into history. Catalunya 2025 was one of those days. Alex Marquez stood on top of the podium, fists raised, finally breathing in the air of a true head-to-head win over his brother. But let's not get it twisted. Marc Marquez was the shadow, the executioner who chose not to swing the blade, the man who rolled off the throttle and allowed history to bend. Call it mercy, call it strategy, call it brotherhood. Whatever you name it, the truth is simple. Alex Marquez's win in Barcelona wasn't just about beating his brother. It was about Marc giving the world a glimpse of his humanity in the middle of his reign of terror. Let's break it down. Marc's kingdom, Alex's chance. Marc Marquez has turned 2025 into a slaughterhouse. 7 straight 37-point weekends. A championship gap that looks like an ocean swallowing the rest. Ducati riding on his back alone, because while Pecco drowns in confusion and inconsistency, and while Alex Marquez flirts with moments of brilliance, Marc has carried 454 of Ducati's 541 points like a warlord, dragging a whole empire across enemy lines. So when the circus rolled into Catalunya, the math was already written. Marc could have sealed a championship match point at Misano. He could have made Barcelona just another brick in the wall of inevitability. But Barcelona wasn't just any track. This was home turf. This was Alex's best shot since Silverstone, maybe the last chance of 2025 where fate aligned with skill. And Marc knew it. That's why the weight of this race went far beyond 25 points. It became about legacy, family, and something much heavier than a trophy. The sprint, the lesson before the war. Saturday was cruel. Alex Marquez had the pace. He had pole. He had Marc beaten. He was gliding through those fast rights. Turn 3, turn 9, turn 13, like they were his playground. Smooth, elegant, faster than Marc could wrestle his GP24. Alex had broken his brother's rhythm, and that's not something you say lightly. Marc was hanging on, compensating on the left-handers, biting the bike like a pit bull, but he knew Alex had him covered. And then came turn 10. Overconfidence, maybe arrogance, maybe the rush of finally leading Marc head-to-head. He braked late, the bike twitched, the grip betrayed him, and down he went. 4 laps from glory, Alex watched the dream shatter in gravel. The sprint handed to Marc like destiny had pulled a cruel joke. And Marc? He didn't even celebrate, because he knew. He knew Alex had actually beaten him on merit that day, even if the result sheet lied. That mistake was painful. But that mistake became the knife Alex sharpened for Sunday. The Grand Prix, mercy dressed as victory. Sunday came with fire. The brothers lined up knowing exactly what was at stake. Marc could have extended his streak, built his kingdom higher, silenced every question. Alex could have folded under Saturday's scars. But instead, the story flipped. Off the line, Marc took the lead, flexing early like the king who always dictates the script. But Alex didn't flinch. By lap 4, he shoved his way past and started writing his own chapter. The pace wasn't insane. They were saving tires, pacing themselves, playing chess at 350 kilometers per hour. But here's the thing. Across 24 laps, nothing separated them. 0. Alex averaged just 0.079 cents faster. That's less than a blink, less than the time it takes for a spark to burn out. Lap after lap, Marc stalked him, breathing down his neck, dipping under 0.3, then backing off. And here's where the truth comes in. Marc rolled off. He admitted it. He used Alex as a shield, as bait to drag the gap on Enea Bastianini behind. He let his brother dictate, knowing full well that at any moment he could have unleashed hell. But he didn't, because this wasn't just about the win. It was about giving Alex his moment. On lap 20, Alex dropped the hammer, 0.852's gap. Marc tried to answer, dug into his reserves, but turn 10 bit him again. A wobble, a flashback to Saturday, and that was the sign. He lifted, he surrendered, not to Alex the rival, but to Alex the brother. By the flag, the gap was 1.74's. The crowd roared. Alex cried. Marc shrugged. That's the whole story. Marc loses face, even in victory. Here's the savage truth. Marc Marquez won the weekend. He extended his points. He kept his stranglehold on the title. He controlled the game. But when Alex lifted that trophy, Marc lost something. Not in the championship. He's untouchable there, but in perception. For years, every rider on that grid has dreamed of beating Marc Marquez in a straight fight. Bezzecchi got a fluke at Silverstone. Zarco in the wet at Le Mans doesn't count. But Alex, he did it twice now, Silverstone Sprint and Barcelona GP. He stared his brother in the eyes and didn't blink. That matters. That breaks aura. That cracks the mythology, even just a little. And Marc knows it. That's why his post-race words dripped with something deeper. Maybe today is the day to lose, he said. Sometimes you try and you can't. That's not Marc Marquez talking like a predator. That's Marc Marquez talking like an older brother. And that's where he lost face. Not because Alex was better, but because the world saw Marc choose mercy. Champions aren't supposed to show mercy. Kings don't hand out thrones. But Marc did, and now the story won't die. Alex's best win. But not for the reasons he thinks. Alex Marquez said this victory was his best, even above Jerez. He called it the one that defined him, the one that proved he can beat the best rider alive on merit. And yeah, from the outside, it looks like that. Pole, lap record, head-to-head win over Marc. It ticks every box. But here's the brutal cut. This wasn't about Alex's strength alone. This was about Marc's choice. Without Marc lifting, without Marc's mercy at turn 10, without Marc letting the leash loosen, this story might have ended differently. Alex doesn't want to hear that because it stings. But the truth is, his greatest win exists because his brother allowed it to. And that's why Alex should feel something deeper than pride. He should feel gratitude. Gratitude that he shares blood with a man who has rewritten the sport and who, on his own turf, decided to let his brother taste the glory that nobody else will ever get handed. That's love disguised as defeat. The brotherhood that never ends. The Marquez brothers aren't just riders. They're a saga. They're proof that family doesn't break even under the brightest lights. Marc could have humiliated Alex in Catalunya, added another win to his arsenal, but he didn't. He let the world see something rare in sport, a king stepping aside to let his bloodline shine, even for a day. And Alex? He'll ride with this forever. He'll use it to believe, to fight, to prove he belongs. But deep inside, he'll always know, Marc is the bar. Marc is the reason. Marc is the man who gave him the air to breathe when nobody else would. That's why this story doesn't end in Barcelona. It continues every weekend, every lap, every shadow Marc casts. Alex rides inside it. Sometimes he escapes, sometimes he burns, but always, always, the brotherhood defines them more than the trophies ever could. Final word. Mercy is the sharpest weapon. People will argue. They'll say Alex beat Marc straight. They'll say Marc gave up. They'll say it was strategy, mercy, or mind games. The truth? It was all of it. Barcelona wasn't about points. It wasn't about streaks. It was about blood. Marc showed the world that even the most ruthless killer in MotoGP history carries mercy in his arsenal. And Alex showed the world that given the window, he can rise. Together, they created something bigger than a race result. They gave MotoGP a story that will outlast the stats. Because one day, when the dust settles, and Marc Marquez retires as the undisputed last OG of this sport, Alex Marquez will look back at Barcelona 2025 and know this was the day his brother chose him over history. That's not weakness. That's not losing face. That's the kind of legend only blood can write.